What's going on, you guys? Welcome to a very special video. Today I am joined by Chris, aka the Topher. I'm sure you guys all know him from YouTube already. And today we will be co-reviewing this FC Mazda RX-7. This is a 1990, it's considered the S5 generation, GXL trim, 79,000 miles, coupe, 5-speed manual, and the owner Erik has done a few tasteful mods to it. I think he did some headers and an exhaust. Originally, this 1.3 liter 2-rotor rotary engine made 160 horsepower. He's saying it's probably plus 10 or 15 above that. Unfortunately, it's not the turbo model.
He said he wanted to keep it reliable.
Fair enough, fair enough. So we're gonna do one run up the hill, then Topher's gonna do a little video for his channel. So if you guys like rotary sounds, stay tuned. This is initial D spec FC RX-7. You guys know Takahashi Ryosuke. This is pretty much, I mean, as close as you can get to a mirror image of his car from the anime.
It is. White on white with white wheels, T37.
Yep, perfect spec.
Yep. Not white anymore after all the driving we've been doing today.
Exactly. That is floored. Foot to the floor.
It's a momentum car.
It is a momentum car.
Slow car fast. Ooh, that front end though.
It turns. It turns.
We're on a set of Falcon Exedy's RT615Ks. 16s.
Yes. Not my favorite tire. I have them on my NSX and they're just not very good. But they're doing fine out here.
Yeah.
Long gear ratios. The throttle requires quite a heavy blip during downshifts. That is foot to the floor. Engine's a bit quieter than I expected. I think the FD has a lot more aggressive sound from inside the cabin, at least.
Yeah, this is definitely mild. The FD that we drove is wild.
You've driven it already, right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
I mean, that's making over double the horsepower.
Yeah.
Well, only weighing like 100 pounds more, I think. Steering, nice and light. Decent feedback, but nowhere near what a manual rack would provide. But the turn-in's quite nice.
Yeah, turn-in is really crisp.
Brake pedal's a little soft. Not sure what he's got for pads. I'll put the full mod list in the video description. Definitely a momentum car. The front end just points right where I want it to go. I think the light weight of the rotary engine really does help that front end feel.
Yeah, even though it's 2,800 pounds, it feels so light.
Yeah, it feels lighter than 2,800, honestly. Definitely got some squeaks and rattles inside the cabin, as you'd expect for a 33-year-old car at this point. We just got out of a 1992 NSX, and that feels just way better built. But you got to remember, this car's MSRP was, whoa, that's some weird throttle behavior there. MSRP was probably less than half, maybe a third of what the NSX cost back in the day.
This thing grips and rips.
It does.
Well, it grips. I don't know how much ripping.
I don't know about rips. Yeah, it definitely grips. I think it has more tire grip than it probably should have. If you want to enjoy this car on the ragged edge, at the limit of adhesion, put some shit tires on it. That's the way to do it.
Erik was also saying he's going to put a shorter final drive in this.
Oh, that would help.
I think that would help a lot. That would
Yeah,
make a big
the gear ratios are quite long.
Yep.
What a cool experience, though.
Yeah, it is cool. This is fun.
It's like getting thrown back into, it honestly feels like a late 80s car, because this car did come out in the 80s, the FC generation.
There we go.
Shifter is not the easiest.
So much confidence though around the corners.
Oh yeah. The front end of this car is the most impressive part. Engine is so-so in terms of power delivery and outright performance. The steering is good, not great. Shifter is certainly not like a contemporary Honda shifter from the era. But this front end is just absolutely glued to the road.
Yeah.
And I think that may be an advantage of having a front engine rear drive platform that has relatively less weight over the front end.
These seats are good.
Seats are really good.
It gets really well bolstered.
Yeah.
I mean, this car's really only happy above $5,000.
Yeah.
And this whole time we've been below that.
Yeah. It's a little tricky to keep the engine and its power band on a tight road like this because of this long gearing.
I mean, this has budget coilovers.
Yeah, feels coilovers. So we'll lock up the front tires a bit there. They don't feel bad though.
Sure, they work, they do the job.
You feel every single bump, but you can still go pretty quick over them.
Yeah, they definitely don't have the sophistication of like an Olin setup or something like
Right.
that.
Eric's FD has JRZs, which is
amazing.
gold standard.
Yep.
Platinum standard, I would say.
Exactly.
All right, I think that's enough of a little drive in the FC RX-7 for me. Really fun little car. I wish it was a turbo model. I mean, obviously, if I owned this car, I would not want the turbo. But because I'm only driving it for 15 minutes, an extra 40 horsepower would have been nice. I'll put it that way. The thing about this car, again, that really impresses me is that front end. It's just so pinned. Let's hop into the FD RX-7 next, rather, and we'll see how it compares. But first of all, let's get Topher behind the wheel.
Sounds good. We'll strap on the POV setup here.
All right, we're now in the FD RX-7 Twin Turbo, also owned by Erik, and he's modified this one to an even higher level. Unfortunately, Topher had to head out early, so what can I say? You guys are just stuck with me. I'll put the full mod list in the video description, but this thing has had its sequential stock turbos converted to a parallel turbo setup. With all the bolt-ons in the tune, it's pushing out about 300 wheel horsepower, maybe a little bit more. The car weighs around 2,800 pounds and change, and it's equipped with JRZ RS1 coilovers, a very nice suspension setup for the FD. Got some red Recaro bucket seats, otherwise the interior is pretty much close to stock. Let's see how this FD with more than double the horsepower and only a little bit more weight than that FC feels. I'm especially interested in seeing how the front end responds compared to that amazing FC. It's got almost the same front end response. Incredible. Even with the twin turbo setup, this car just turns so well, so eagerly. Obviously, it's got so much more power. It's still a 13B engine, but with the twin turbo setup, this thing rips. Even on the uphill, this thing feels properly quick. Oh baby, this is a proper amount of power for this car. A little over 300 wheel horsepower is just the sweet spot. Steering feels about the same as the FC. It's hydraulic, it has reasonable feedback. Shifter feels very familiar as well. It's notchy, it has very positive engagement into each gate, but there is a little bit of a learning curve. The surge in torque around 4,000 RPM, above 4,000 RPM actually, is pretty intoxicating in this car. It makes it a little bit trickier to drive compared to the FC and its linear power band. This one's a lot more peaky. You do have to anticipate the turbos spooling, but once you're higher in the rev range, I suspect this engine will feel pretty responsive. The engine just feels like it has so little inertia. It just loves to rev. Some pops and bangs from the exhaust when you lift off. Woo. This is peak 90s JDM motoring right here, baby. A properly modified FD twin turbo RX-7. The suspension is handling these bumps so well. Oh, you gotta be ready for that surge in torque. I do wish the gear ratios were a little shorter. The second to third gear shift does drop the RPMs quite a bit. I've driven quite a few FD RX-7s over the past several years, but I can honestly say this is by far the best sorted example. Just the fact that the door handles don't fall off when you pull on them just shows you the attention to detail that Erik has put into this car and his other cars. His FC, he also has an S2000. He's truly a JDM lover, and he's done a great job. Not only making these cars feel period correct, yet elevated in performance, but also just the fit and finish and the attention to detail with the interiors. Really just top-notch, modern tuning of an old JDM car. Brake pedal feels good. When you lift off the throttle when you're high in the RPM range, it's pretty violent. All right, let's turn it the other direction. What a car. Heel toe's a bit tricky. You have to anticipate the throttle response a little bit. Ooh, a little bit of boost cut there. Not sure what that's all about. These Mazda RX-7s, especially the twin turbo models, these engines require a lot of maintenance and a lot of fine tuning to get them to run reliably. This engine is something else. It's super smooth. It loves to rev, but that surge in torque from around 4,500 RPM, you have to be ready for it. It almost reminds me of a single turbo Mark IV Supra in some ways. When you change these turbos from sequential to a parallel setup, you do induce quite a bit of low-end boost lag. I prefer linear torque curves, but I'm not going to deny that this engine is really, really exciting. When the boost hits, you're just holding on to the steering wheel. But it's different than the Mark IV Supra in that it actually handles well. The front end of this car, I wouldn't say it feels quite as light and nimble as that of the FC RX-7, but it's not far off either. This car loves to turn into corners. You can attack just so hard. Right here, look at this. Such a sharp front end feeling. Ooh, some more boost cut there. These cars are just not well suited for beginners. If you don't know how to wrench on a car, I would highly advise against getting a turbo RX-7. It no longer has that boxy 80s vibe. It has a much more curvaceous design to it. Whereas the FC exterior screams 1980s, this car actually, in my opinion, looks newer than you would think for an early 90s model. It looks like it's shrink wrapped on the outside. It's just so taut. It's so curvy. It looks like it doesn't even have an extra pound of fat on it to shed. So between the FC and FD, which would I have? I think as an owner, I would lean towards the lower maintenance of the naturally aspirated FC. But as someone who lusts after JDM cars, the FD RX-7 is still peak Mazda for me. The engine just provides so much more performance, so much more drama. And the exterior styling as well as the interior are just stuff of legend. You've still got these pop-up headlights. It truly is just such a special machine to drive. Out on a more open road like this, you can really just make better use of this car's performance. Whereas the FC really shines on a tight downhill canyon road. I would love to try out an FB RX-7 next. All right, so let me know what you think of the FC and FD Mazda RX-7s. Both of these cars are so special to drive, and while they obviously do share a lot in common, there's also quite a bit that separates the two in overall driving feel. Too good. So a big thank you to Erik for letting me review both of his minty fresh Mazda RX-7s. As always, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you in the next one.